Porkins Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything: geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Porkins Policy Radio. As always, I am your host, Pierce Redmond, and you can find this show here at American Freedom Radio, AmericanFreedomRadio.com, as well as on my website, which is PorkinsPolicyReview.com. And you can always follow the show both on my website, but on YouTube through my RSS feed. You can find me on iTunes and TuneIn, and some more to come. And, of course, you can hear me rebroadcast later on in the week on Awake and PSN and a whole bunch of other networks on Friday nights from, I believe, if I have it correct, it's from 11 to 1 a.m. So just after Ed Opperman. But lots to get into today. Before I introduce my guests and our topic for today, I just want to a few quick things. Of course, if you want to support my work, you can always do that by going to patreon.com/Pierce Redmond, and you can become a subscriber. And, of course, I have a brand new bonus podcast up, the first in a trilogy of episodes on one of my favorite TV shows, House of Cards, the British version. So the first episode is up with good friend Tom Secker. He's going to be joining me the next 2 months for the next two subscriber podcasts talking about that. So definitely check that out or sign up if you'd like to listen. And then also I was just on Uncle the podcast with again with Tom Secker, and we were speaking with Uncle and Aaron Franz, and we discussed Top Gun. So that's up as well, and a very strange episode, but a fun one nonetheless. And very briefly, I just wanted to throw this out that some breaking news, but the U.S. has just expelled 15 Cuban diplomats in response to the sonic attacks that have been going on in Cuba. And I just want to mention, if people are interested in following that story, Tom and I actually talked about this a few weeks ago back on episode 108, and we talked about who we thought might actually be behind the attacks, and it's a story I've been following, so if you're interested, definitely go check that out. But lots to discuss today. I know that obviously what happened in Las Vegas a few days ago is very big news, and we will be touching on it somewhat in today's episode. But I'm going to be recording, I think, something special with Ed Opperman talking about this later on in the week, and I think it'll probably be available to subscribers. And maybe we'll incorporate it into next week's show. But I am joined by good friend of the show. He's fast becoming a frequent guest, Keelan Balderson, the man behind eyesshut.co.uk. And we're going to be discussing the wave of bombings and terrorist violence in the UK, but also across Europe. Keelan Balderson, how are you?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me back.
Absolutely. Well, Keelan, we've the past couple of weeks, you and I have been talking about obviously the Manchester bombing, and a few of the other bizarre terrorist incidents that have been going on in the UK. For people that are sort of haven't noticed or been out of the loop, there have been 5 terrorist attacks in the UK in the past 6 months, which is, quite a bit. Not to mention a wave of this going on, particularly in France. We just had a stabbing. 2 women were stabbed to death in Marseille over the weekend. There's been the trial of Abdul Qadir Merah has just begun in Paris. He was this guy that went on a killing spree back in 2012 in Toulouse. And then, of course, Keelan, most recently in the UK, we had this strange attack, I guess it's been described as sort of a botched bombing that took place in the Parsons Green tube station. And, this attack, when it happened, of course, you and I were talking on Twitter about this back and forth, and it definitely seems like it's another piece in this very strange puzzle that again began with the Westminster attack 6 months ago, and you and I had sort of touched on this before. These appeared to be part of some sort of wave of almost like Gladio type operations, and there certainly is a strategy of tension going on in the UK and in Europe, and we wanted to discuss that. But for people that don't know, on September 15th at about 8:20 a.m., a homemade bomb partially exploded on a crowded train at the Parsons Green tube station. Witnesses described seeing a fireball near the rear of the carriage. Luckily, nobody was killed, but about 30 people were injured. Many of them were also injured because of the stampede to get off of the train. And I think people will have seen the video of this like white bucket with wires sticking out of it in a bag that's on fire. That made the rounds all over Twitter. And instantly, the government came out and declared that TATP was the main component in the bomb. We had the Minister for State Security, Ben Wallace, quote, confirmed this. And he and most of the, government and former government talking heads continued to repeat this claim the whole day, all of the 15th and the days that followed. And again, the media continued to sort of falsely state that both 7/7 and the Manchester bombs were also TATP. And this, of course, I think piqued both of our interest. And there's a few more sort of angles to that I want to get to. But Keelan, tell us a little bit more. Kind of fill us in on some of the details of this, and then let's kind of get into this the Parsons Green attack, and this TATP thing really seems to be like now the hallmark of all of these sorts of attacks. And what's going on with that?
Yeah, well, to start with, it wasn't, like you say, it wasn't a very powerful explosion. Authorities are going with the idea that the substance didn't fully ignite properly. It didn't really work the way it was intended. There was supposedly shrapnel left inside the bucket that didn't even escape. And all it really did was cause, obviously people that are hurt, that's a terrible thing. But it mostly caused like superficial burns, just to the people in the immediate vicinity. And then, like you say, there was a lot of running and emptying afterwards, which caused, more injuries. But traditionally, when you think of train bombings, you obviously think of 7/7, the Madrid thing. And these killed a lot of people, carriages destroyed. Unfortunately, in this case, nobody was, killed. And the carriage itself was not even damaged, really. And we'll probably get to this, but the distinction this time is that it wasn't a suicide bombing. The device was allegedly left a few stops earlier on a timer, and it went off when it approached or just stopped at the overground station, which again I think is quite interesting, because that's more open. It's more visual. People can see it. The news can get there. And also the damage is less because you're not in a crowded underground area. Just the logistics of it. I'm not sure how to interpret that, but I thought it was quite interesting that it was at this overground station. But like you said, yeah, TATP, almost right away, the media, the sources talking to the media floated that it was TATP. Supposedly the same substance that was used at Manchester, even though we've not had that inquest yet and the evidence for that hasn't been forthcoming. We don't really know what was used at Manchester. And then they supposedly said, it's the same substance that was used on 7/7. And I think we talked about that a bit before.
Which is all false, just to reiterate for people out there. There is really no tangible connection.
Well, there was no TATP recovered from the blast sites on 7/7. So the swabbing and all the forensics that they did, they couldn't come to any conclusive conclusion about what was actually there. And then actually at the inquest, they put forth that it was another substance called HMTD, which I guess is somewhat similar, but it's not TATP, it's a different substance. And then that substance that they recovered from a so-called bomb factory down in Leeds where these men were supposedly making this bomb, they were not forensically linked to the substances in these tubs. So they were linked to some things in the flat, but not the actual HMTD. And then when the experts tested this sort of brown sludge, it wasn't explosive. It was an inert substance. So the idea that it was TATP is just completely confused. And actually, just a funny side note, I was asked to be on this show by the BBC called 7/7 Conspiracy Road Trip, where they took like a bunch of so-called conspiracy theorists and sort of tested the government's theory, and they put their theories forth, and they went and met talking heads and stuff. But on that show, they basically got an expert to make TATP to see if it could blow up a bus. And
that's right. Yeah.
Like, okay, it can blow up a bus, but it wasn't TATP. TATP wasn't recovered from the bus. So what's the point in this experiment?
Right. You could make dynamite and blow up a bus. That doesn't mean that dynamite was used.
Yeah. So I was kind of wise enough to avoid that show. They were a bit deceptive in the emails they were sending me on that. But yeah, just a little side note on that. But so this Ahmed Hassan is charged with using TATP. So they must be pretty sure that that's what it is. But one of the problems with that idea is that there's these eyewitnesses of a fireball. And obviously a lot of burns associated with this attack. But TATP on its own is not exothermic, which means it doesn't really react in a fiery explosion. It doesn't produce a lot of heat. It doesn't produce flames. You can Google YouTube videos of TATP being used. It's more like an energetic bang with like some smoke. It's not like, I don't know, dynamite where, it's boom. It's like, it's not really the way they've described it. So, maybe TATP was part of the device, part of the detonation. We don't really know, but it just seems odd that they keep pushing this TATP story, when it never really seems to add up. I think maybe one aspect to that we could tease out is that TATP is something somebody can make in a homemade environment. Random teenagers don't have access to C4 or anything. So if the story is it's homemade, then that would make sense. But like the results of that never seem to be proven. So, it's an odd one. We'll have to see if it actually goes to trial what they present.
Well, and we'll link up to in the show notes, but you did a video, I believe it was, within a few hours or so, of the Parsons Green attack. And it was a great video in a lot of ways, Caleb, but in particular that you were kind of cautioning people to sort of relax, don't jump to conclusions, that we're being bombarded with a lot of information from the British media. And again, to sort of relate that to what just transpired in Las Vegas a few days ago, caution everyone again to calm down, not jump to conclusions. We don't know very much, if anything, even about, both attacks really. But you and I think you, linked up to, or you mentioned, there was a former head of counterterrorism at the Ministry of Defense, Major General Chip Chapman. He told the BBC that basically the TATP must not have been that good, because 1 ounce will blow the doors off a car, but obviously that didn't happen at Parsons Green. So again, very odd sort of messaging going on, and this seems to again be like a theme of all of this wave, these 5 attacks over the past 6 months in the UK alone. The sort of vagueness and also the way that these sort of strands, like you said, perhaps they're pushing the TATP angle because it is something that you can make in your home. And they are certainly trying to suggest in at least the Manchester and in the Parsons Green attack that these were, kids who built these, not kids, but, young men who built these by themselves, with ingredients they got off Amazon.com, which we'll get to in a little bit. But Let's focus a little bit more on the actual attack itself and the only known suspect that we have or know of, Ahmed Hassan. So in the immediate aftermath of this attack, as with Manchester, a whole bunch of young Middle Eastern men were arrested. 7 suspects were arrested initially, and then all of them were released except for the alleged bomber, Ahmed Hassan, who's an 18-year-old Iraqi orphan. He had been living in Surrey, which is like south of London, in foster care. He had arrived in the UK in 2015. He told immigration officials that his parents were killed in Iraq, and I believe that he also said that he was detained and tortured as well. And then Hassan was arrested in Dover, a port city, and he was, it's believed that he was trying to flee the country. Keelan, flesh this out for us, because this again, I don't want to like jump to conclusions. Obviously, in a bombing like this, people are panicked, people are going to get arrested, things. But do we know? We'll flesh this out a little bit. And I mean, for instance, who are these other suspects that have just been released? And what do we know about Ahmed Hassan?
Well, a lot of this we don't know a lot about them. The one guy that was first arrested and was really well publicized everywhere, this young man called Yahya Farouk, his mother subsequently suffered a heart attack because of his arrest. And he was a Syrian refugee. And he actually seemed quite well integrated, went to college, photos of him, at the tourist spots, partied with friends, seemed quite normal, seemed to just be progressing fine. Not everyone from Syria is ISIS. Syrians are fighting ISIS. They're fleeing ISIS. And this guy looks like he kind of got wrapped up, victim really in that whole situation. But he was fostered at this place with this aging couple, along with Hassan, who, as you say, is an 18-year-old Iraqi immigrant. And it's odd because this is almost the first time that somebody who is a victim of the whole Iraq situation, who has come over here as a refugee, has been alleged to have done something significant. And that kind of gives the right the narrative of, the refugees are all coming in and committing terror attacks. I just find that quite interesting that might finally actually be a thing. They've finally been given the story that they have been trying to push the whole time. Which never really fleshed out to be true, because most of the attacks in this country are homegrown.
Well, and there's also this, the media tends to, frame the quote refugees as, they make it sound as if these guys are straight off the boat. These are like guys that, land, in like southern Italy or, in some of the islands like Lampedusa off Italy. And then, and they're radical jihadis, and then they make their way immediately to the UK to carry out bombings. Let's keep in mind that, Salman Abedi was born in the UK. He's not really a refugee per se, and using the term refugee for his parents is a bit of an exaggeration. They were refugees in the sense that they were, involved in a terrorist group that was trying to kill Muammar Gaddafi and were given asylum in the UK, presumably by, British intelligence. And the same is sort of true for this kid. I mean, Ahmed Hassan, he's been here since 2015 when he was 16 years old. These are not, I think the perception very much is when they say, refugee, is that they've just shown up,
it's
the
not
clothes
an
on their
invading
back.
army.
Right, exactly. Not that, and I mean, a fascinating part of this, and this isn't to necessarily like, excuse what Ahmed Hassan may or may not have done, but I mean, he kind of had like a reason, I mean, if his parents were murdered in Iraq, he was detained and tortured. We don't know the specifics of that, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to sort of wonder, well, was he persecuted by the government there? Were his parents killed as a result of Western interference into Iraq? We rarely kind of are presented with that scenario nowadays. Now it's really just, well, they hate us because of our freedoms, not, well, my parents were killed and I was detained and tortured, maybe on behalf of the Western powers that run Iraq. So that in and of itself is quite interesting. Keelan, anything on the foster parents? I know that I think they've been doing this since like 1970, and can you explain to the listeners what an MBE is? And because they were awarded those in 2009, and there's pictures of them with the Queen. What is that?
So the Queen, like every year or so, there are certain awards and honors that get given out. I don't know the specific details of what an MBE is, but it's just to recognize that you've contributed a lot to society. In one way or another. Sometimes celebrities even get them, and for their contributions to years of acting and stuff. But
okay,
it's yeah.
And we don't know much about the parents, these foster parents, outside of that they seem to have had no idea about what Ahmed Hassan was up to, right?
Yeah, it's the same kind of story. We thought he was a nice guy. We didn't have any warning signs. It doesn't seem like he was all over social media, spreading some kind of message. It seems kind of out of the blue. But often when that happens, then we find out that, oh, no, this person was monitored and stuff. I mean, I would be interested to know if the state did know this guy's history before all this happened, considering, that his parents were killed. And to get in the country, there are some checks. It's not like you just walk in. They do try and ascertain who you are. So,
this sort of breaks with the pattern of the last couple of attacks, right? I mean, in that there isn't the obligatory statement from MI5. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, of course he was, on our radar. But damn, we must have just missed him. I mean, as far as we know, Ahmed Hassan was not on any watch list. People weren't, I think even with Salman Abedi, I mean, there were people around him that were reporting, or at least were saying there was something off with him. There's nothing like that with Hassan, right?
Right. And that's what makes it so, interesting that the BBC in particular have kind of jumped on the narrative now, that there's such a thing called a known wolf. And this time it might not actually be that. Obviously Trump made his tweet, and that's probably just Trump running his mouth. But this guy called Andrew Donaldson, listed as a former counterterrorism officer. I mean, I don't know who this guy is. There's nothing to Google about him. So he wasn't the head of MI5 or anything.
Right.
But the BBC had him on, and he basically coined this new phrase of known wolf. And he said, this concept of a lone wolf would now more accurately be described as a known wolf, because increasingly attacks, when they happen, have been committed by individuals who are known in some way. And this was part of this BBC piece about how now there seems to be this new thing of people being known to the intelligence services. And that's just not true. It's not a new thing. It's been the thing every single time, more or less, apart from this time. And now they like jumped the gun and got it wrong. But he also said, look, we've gone from lone wolves to known wolves, which is confusing because you can be a lone wolf and still be known to the intelligence service. A lone wolf means you weren't working with anybody else. Salman Abedi, we've been given this idea that he was mostly a lone wolf, but he has a long string of different things that tie him to being known to the state in some way. So The BBC, yeah, a bit of a weird piece here, but there's this new word called lone wolf being thrown around.
And because you pointed this out to me, and I like you, I'm sure, I was pretty shocked that we've fallen that low to, because at least in past events like this, be they in England or say the U.S. or France or other places like that, inevitably when it comes to pass that damn, we knew, like, say you look at like the Boston bombing or something. Well, yes, of course we were monitoring the older brother Tamerlan, but whoa, damn, he slipped through our fingers. It's sort of like, oh, okay, but I mean, was there any sort of like reaction or anything that you were able to sort of like glean from this by the idea that, now they're just sort of pushing we're going to know, all of these events are going to be involving people that we were watching, but I guess we didn't stop, I mean, are people really going to kind of roll over and accept this as an explanation?
Well, what they've done, they floated this number that there's 23,000 jihadis that we're monitoring. Sometimes the number gets smaller, it depends, but it's an absurdly big number.
Yes.
And they say, well, we just don't have the funding to keep track of all these guys. Yes, we know them, but we don't know them because we can't really keep track of everything. But the trouble is, as we've just said with the Manchester bomber, Salman Abedi, you can't use the excuse that you weren't monitoring him and he was just on the periphery, because there is all these specific things that happened. Like, okay, so control orders were lifted and he gets to go over to Libya. That's one thing. And all the traveling and everything related to that. He goes to visit a convicted terrorist in prison. He's part of a family and a community that were very much given asylum, like political asylum in this country. And some of them worked for MI6. People reported him to certain anti-terror schemes. The FBI said that they warned Britain that he was planning something. It's like, that's not the same.
Yeah.
That's not the same as, we have this guy. He's a bit radical. He's been Googling stuff. He's part of this 23,000. No, this is a very specific thing. And like when we go back to 7/7, it's the same kind of, we had the information, but whoops.
It wasn't shared properly, or whatever excuse they come up with.
Dave couldn't seem to work the photocopier, so we've got half of a bomber's face, and it's black and white for some reason. And instead of emailing it, we're gonna send it in the post, and it's not gonna get there. And then the informant can't identify these people. Well, why do you think that? Because you just screwed it all up. Or at least they have they can say that that's what happened. Because they go, plausible deniability, but we don't really know what went on there.
Whereas now, I mean, as I said, we've entered into this known wolf that these are all, which is, I guess we don't have to spend too much time on, but it really should be shocking to people that that people, former government, and you got to assume, these people like Andrew Donaldson are they're still working for the government, obviously, or working for intelligence, even if it's just being a talking head on the BBC. But for these sort of people, these are supposed to be authority figures. They're supposed to be the people that are protecting us. For them to basically now just come out and state that, we're now in the era where we know these people exist, we know what they're doing, and yet we're unable to stop it. That's, that should be shocking to people that we've reached that level where it's really like, it is almost like they're telling us we're not going to stop them, or there's nothing we can do, that they're going to do this and you just sort of have to kind of accept it. Which is crazy to think. I mean, it really kind of excuses them of any responsibility whatsoever in preventing this.
And what concerns me is, most people in this country just assume that the security services have our best interests.
Yes.
And every time this happens, the concept of funding comes up. They want more money to be able to stop these attacks. They don't have enough resources. But they actually have a heck of a lot of resources. I did some research into this. They have the security intelligence budget, and essentially every year since 7/7, it's gone up. In 2013 and 2014, they were getting 2.48 billion, and then in 2015, this was bumped up again by another 1.5 billion, which will be fully allocated by 2020. And there's also another £1 billion fund called the Conflict Stability and Security Fund, which funds their covert operations overseas in places like Syria and Libya, where they've been supporting Islamic extremists and terrorism and fostering a lot of the problems. And we previously talked about Theresa May lifting the control orders and all that business. That's part of that money part. Now, not only do they get all that money, MI5, MI6, GCHQ, they don't have to account for it. So we don't know how it's broken down. We don't really know where it's going. MPs don't really know where it's going. They just get to say, oh, it's for counter-terrorism purposes. They actually had an inquiry into the Overseas Fund earlier this year, and they couldn't, there was either no strategy for the funding, or they just wouldn't tell people what they were doing with it, because of national security. So we don't exactly know which groups it went to, which countries it went to. So they're getting billions, and we don't really know what they're doing with it. And as we say, in every major terror event that has taken place in this country, the culprits have been known in some way to the authorities. So I'm not sure I trust them, to be quite honest with you.
No, yeah, I wouldn't trust them with anything. Quickly, Keelan, there's you mentioned it before briefly. There's this yet again a tweet from Trump, and he said, quote, "Another attack in London by a loser terrorist. These are sick and demented people who were in sights at Scotland Yard. Must be proactive." He said this within, I don't know, hours or so of the Parsons Green attack. Is this yet another admission that MI6, MI5 was monitoring this guy, or that the Metropolitan Police were? Is this Trump kind of running his mouth? Should we, I never really want to give too much credence to anything he says, especially if it's in a tweet. But it was interesting, again, given some of the strange leaks that emerged after Manchester, where the New York Times appeared to have information about the bomb and stuff before the general public or even some British newspapers did. Should we rest any credence on this?
I don't think, if there was some kind of intelligence floating around, I think we would have heard about it through the media, and that hasn't actually come out. So I think Trump is probably just generalizing based on what happened last time. Just like these guys are always in their sights. So, I wouldn't read too much into it, but at least it highlights the fact that, this has been a thing. But yeah, it's just Trump being Trump, I think.
Right. I think Hassan was recently before a court, right? I mean, this is like preliminary stuff, and we haven't learned anything since the attacks on the 15th, right?
So he has been formally charged. So he's gone through the kind of paperwork for that to happen. We don't know if he's pleading guilty or not guilty. If he pleads guilty, then we're not going to know anything, and this is just going to be swept under the rug. If he does plead not guilty, then we're going to have a trial, and then we get to hopefully know all of the evidence and everything that they claim. So he's charged with handling TATP and carrying out this attack. They specifically put TATP into the charge, so that's part of it. But also, interestingly, Amazon has been thrown into this case. And what I found really interesting about that was that before Hassan was charged, just a day or so after, before anyone really knew anything, there was a story doing the rounds that Amazon was recommending bomb materials. So the algorithm.
Explain this.
Yeah, so Amazon has this algorithm. I'm sure everyone's seen it. When you click on a product, below the page, there's, other customers bought this, or you should buy this because it's related to this. And apparently if you went on a page with an ignition switch or something, then it would be like, you need to buy wires and you need to do all this kind of stuff. None of the things are illegal on there. But they claim that this was kind of giving people the recipe to make bombs. Now, I did play around with this a little bit. I don't know whether that was wise or not. But I can't personally seem to replicate that. I mean, I don't necessarily know what I'm looking for anyway. And I think that's kind of a point, that I don't know what I'm looking for, so it's not going to make me go buy a bomb. If you're at the stage of wanting to build a device, you're not looking at this little window on Amazon to tell you how to do it.
Right.
And if you're not actually looking for bomb components, then it doesn't mean anything to you. So it's kind of one of those stories that's kind of blown out of proportion. Amazon don't seem to be very open about how the algorithm works, but I'm pretty sure there's sort of a search history element to it as well. I'm not sure it's just that hundreds and hundreds of people are buying bombs off Amazon. Because, I mean, if they were, where are they? What are they doing with them? There's not all these bombs going off. So, it just seems a little bit odd. And the fact that it came before Amazon was linked to Hassan, and in the story, they don't make the connection. So, is it a coincidence?
Really? Okay.
Did they have sources but chose not to make the connection yet? It's all a bit weird. And I wonder whether this is some kind of censorship. We need to get control of Amazon kind of thing. Or it's just, a headline grabber. Amazon recommending people make bombs or whatever. But I wouldn't put too much significance on it. I don't think people are being influenced by Amazon.
Right. I mean, that's the thing too. Again, if the presumption is that you're, I don't know, trying to build something else, and then slowly through the, people also bought this, you'd somehow gather together all the parts to construct a bomb. I mean, that's a little far-fetched. It is, though. I mean, the authorities are going with the theory that Hassan bought these ingredients off Amazon. That is correct, right?
Yeah, that came out with the charge. So they are saying that that's exactly what happened. So it'd be interesting to see how they prove that in court or whatever, whether they just scanned his computer and it was there or whatever.
And specifically on the construction of the bomb, not that there were a ton of details with Salman Abedi in the Manchester bombing, but there appear to be even less details with Hassan. Do we know anything specific about where he constructed the bomb? I mean, there was we talked about this at length. I think the last two times we discussed Manchester, but these stories that we were reading that they had found residue or evidence of bombs in multiple houses that Salman Abedi had been to. Do we know anything like that related to Hassan? I mean, did they find anything in his foster parents' home? Is that where he constructed it? Did he construct it somewhere else? Because in preparation for this episode, I was kind of shocked at how little the media was sort of telling us when they're, initially, the media, at least with Manchester, they threw everything at us. And some things stuck and some things didn't, but there was quite a lot of information. With Ahmed Hassan, and again, he's alive, seems to be even less. Do we know anything specifically about where he constructed the bomb, anything like that?
There's been reports of police searching places for this stuff, but no, there doesn't really seem to be anything specific about where he would have made this. And you would assume that, they would have at least some idea, but no, there doesn't really seem to be anything. The only thing we really have is just this one CCTV shot of someone lugging a little shopping bag, which is what this device was alleged to have been placed in. So it's like a a freezer, like quite a heavy duty shopping bag with a white plastic bucket. And that's literally all we really know. And we're told that there was shrapnel inside and that TATP was a primary part of it because that's what he's being charged with. But no, there's not really any specific information.
And on the bomb itself, I mean, like you said, there's now, and is the CCTV footage available? Because maybe I missed it, but is that of him? You know, it's supposed. I mean, at least we saw Salman Abedi. I mean, there doesn't seem to be any doubt that that is Salman Abedi in the CCTV footage, you know, like shopping for tuna fish and a bunch of other things or walking around the Manchester area. But do we actually have CCTV footage or at least still shots of Ahmed Hassan?
Well, this is the interesting thing because this time around, for some reason, I guess this just happens. The media gets a talking point and it goes around every single station and every newspaper. But they actually did a pretty good job of saying, you know, this is London. This is the most surveilled city on earth, or at least one of them. It's up there. There's CCTV everywhere, all along the tube, inside the carriages, all around the city. There should be CCTV of him. There should be CCTV of him planting it, getting off the train, the whole journey. But there is only one clip that's been released to the public, and this just shows the rear side of somebody walking away with a bag that's similar to the one in the attack. But the person's not identified. All the reports say, you know, inconclusive, we don't really know who it is. Because to start with, they thought it was Yahya Farouk, so they thought it was the other guy. So nothing has come out to say that he has been confirmed to have done this by CCTV, which is pretty odd. And the media did make it clear that there should be, but I wonder now why they're not saying, well, where is it then? It's not been released or anything.
Well, and I mean, they just sort of made me think again the Vegas stuff right now. You know, if you walk into a hotel in Vegas, let alone a casino in Vegas, you're never not on camera. You know, there should be, you know, hours worth of footage of this guy Paddock going, you know, especially with this array of guns that he had. I mean, you know, he must have, you know, they must have been in bags or something. But we've seen, you know, yeah, I know. And the only CCTV footage we've seen of Paddock is from like 2011. Where he's like tripping in like the lobby of a casino, and I believe he tried to sue the casino over that. You know, like that's what we've been given, and it's like a 2-second clip, but nothing of this guy walking into the Mandalay Bay Hotel. I mean, you know, nothing from any of the. I believe he gambled that weekend. Nothing from. Again, I mean, casinos. I mean, you can't. There's nowhere to hide in a casino. You're always on camera. So, and even on that CCTV footage, though, getting back to the Parsons Green, like you said, I mean, the person is unidentified, and they believed it was a friend of Hassan. Is there even any proof that Hassan was there? I know that the theory is that he escaped in the sort of ensuing rush to get out of the train car, but I mean, is there any evidence that he was even there?
That's a good point. No, I don't think at this point they've come out and stated that they have, you know, they think it's him. That's just kind of what it is. He's charged, but there's not really anything for us to sink our teeth into yet. I think the story is that he put it on a couple of stops earlier and then left it. And then once it got to Parsons Green, it exploded. They say there was a timer on it. And it was wired up with these Christmas tree lights, which is interesting because that's been seen before. I can't quite remember the details on that, but there's now a sort of Christmas tree light copycat effect going on or something.
It's like well, you know, that reminds me, back like a year ago, like almost, you know, to the date on September 17th. And then for a few days after, there were a series of bombs that were found in Chelsea here in New York. And nobody was injured, just like with this, but they exploded. And then there was one bomb that was placed in Seaside in New Jersey, like at the start of a marathon. So again, they're hearkening back to pressure cooker bombs, Boston. But I found that interesting because again, and the guy I believe he was caught, the Chelsea bomber. But, that brings me to this whole question too of we've now gone from suicide bombers to possibly unwitting or unknowing suicide bombers to just bombers. This is a bit odd in and of itself, right, Keelan? I mean, that we're meant to believe that this guy wasn't a suicide bomber. I mean, this sort of breaks the mold a bit, and I just want to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, yeah, I found that quite interesting because with Manchester, I mean, we talked about it. I did a podcast on it. There was a lot of logical problems with the idea that Salman Abedi was a suicide bomber. His bomb had remote detonation. His actions that day before the attack in terms of buying, mundane tins of tuna and not really looking, it didn't seem like it was his final day or anything.
Yeah.
Cleaning products, just, we went through the whole list of just weird issues with that. And then this time around, all of those logical problems seem to have been tied up now. It was remotely designated, but he wasn't a suicide bomber this time. We don't really know much about his actions before this happened, but I just found that the transition between the two quite interesting. And obviously before that 7/7, just straight up suicide bombings is what's alleged. So yeah, the MO does seem to have changed. I was sitting here not long ago saying, well, they don't need to be suicide bombers. And if he had a remote detonating bomb, well, why did he have to blow himself up? And then we get an attack where somebody doesn't blow themselves up. I just found that quite interesting. Yeah.
Well, I guess, and that of course begs the question, why these narratives are shifting and changing, and I doubt, MI5 was listening to our podcast on this, but it is we clearly weren't the only people asking these sorts of questions. And you have to assume that on some level, the security services are aware of this. And, and especially because, when we talked about Manchester, I mean, it really was there were almost too many problems with this, there were too many questions about, well, why was there a remote detonator? I mean, and let's even take a minute, Keelan, and go from Manchester was supposed to be the most sophisticated bomb seen since the IRA in the UK to what we have. I mean, for all intents and purposes, that the thing on Parsons Green, it doesn't look like a bomb. It looks like a bucket with some crap in it. And furthermore, were they not concerned? I mean, you see these videos on Twitter and Facebook and stuff. I mean, people are within, I don't know, 5 or 6 feet of the bomb, filming it on fire. I mean, you would think, you'd evacuate the whole area. I mean, what's going on with that?
Well, I mean, like you say, it's to me, if this was legitimate, it has the logical, all the logical points that, okay, maybe this is just a young guy, he doesn't really know what he's doing. The bomb's a dud. It didn't work. It didn't really kill anybody. He didn't want to kill himself. And just the contrast with Manchester, it's just, the logical gaps have been plugged. And, does that suggest it was 100% legitimate or not? I don't know.
No, the second thing that sort of jumped out at me, when I was following the coverage in Parsons Green too, is just, I mean, a crowded train in the morning, this is rush hour. It was packed with kids going to school. In New York, I've been on crowded trains before, in the city, say I'm going uptown. It could be around 42nd Street. The train is packed. people come on, people come off. Suddenly, oh my God, you look down and you do see like the typical, the black backpack that you're supposed to be freaked out.
I do find it odd that someone could walk onto a train, leave a bucket and a bag and walk off again. That is a bit of a bizarre thing.
Exactly. I mean, that was one thing that, and listen, like I said, I've been on trains before where people do leave bags, and I think, we've been so conditioned here in New York to think, this is it. This, look around you. These are the last people you're ever going to see. But, most of the time it is just a bag. People do leave, but, that seems fairly normal. But to leave a giant bucket, with Christmas tree lights, again, some of these experts on, BBC and other places talking about how volatile TATP is, okay? Yet Salman Abedi is apparently, running around Manchester with it in a suitcase. Nothing happens. Hassan has it in a bucket, which doesn't really seem to be sealed or anything, with Christmas tree lights. Nothing happens. I mean, that in and of itself just struck me as so weird. That, he, like you say, he walks into a crowded train, puts a giant bucket down, and then is meant to get off, and nobody thinks anything of this?
Well, it's similar to on 7/7, which was always bizarre, was the spreading of the IDs everywhere. So on 7/7, like Mohammed Sadiq Khan's IDs were found at multiple blast sites,
right?
And people questioned at the time, how are all these IDs intact? Shouldn't they have burnt up in the explosions or whatever? And the BBC spoke to some experts, and then they seemed to think, and the story that was put forth was, oh no, they dropped them at various points and spread them around to make sure that they were identified. But how do you not notice? Because a lot of the eyewitnesses on 7/7 are very vague. There's nothing that stands out. A lot of them contradict each other, and it's never really clear if anyone really did see any of these people. But if they're dropping like credit cards and driver's licenses at different spots, you'd think that would be a bit more obvious. I don't know.
Or that maybe someone might be like, hey, buddy, you just dropped your bank card.
Right, yeah.
Or take it and turn it in somewhere. No, I know. I mean, this is this is why I'm having trouble kind of wrapping my head around the Parsons Green thing, is that, of course, and I'm sure you have the same feeling, the conspiracy theorist in me wants to, theorize or believe that there's something more to this. I mean, I almost wonder if this isn't just, some idiot kid. I mean, maybe there's not much else to this. I don't know. But it plays so well for the media and the government, and obviously, I mean, the right in England must be lapping this up. This is totally their, now it's like no longer just a theory. It's like, yes, refugees are terrorists. They work for ISIS.
Well, it also plays well for the, everything is fake people, who immediately jumped on it and were like, well, there was nobody injured. This was all fake. No,
yeah.
Well, they never really said it. Like, they kind of strawmanned it as if they were saying it was a 7/7 attack. But look, everyone's fine. No one has ever actually said that this was some kind of devastating explosion. It never was meant. It never was meant to be. So to use the argument that everyone's fine, well, everyone is more or less fine. That's the story.
Right, exactly. No, I know. If anything, I mean, that's what's odd about this. And like you said, I mean, the government's not saying people were, they're not lying about that. Well, we're at the break right now. Keelan, I'm going to try and get you to stick around a bit in the second hour because I have a few more questions. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
American.
It's practically narcotic.
Freedom.
Oh, yes. I like very much.
Radio.
You're an American institution.
American Freedom Radio.
Since the beginning, civilizations have risen and fallen. Rome, ancient Persia, Mongolia, Britain, and now America. Befallen by natural disasters, broken families, moral decay, lack of preparedness and conflict. Don't let this happen to you. Are you prepared? Would you like to help others prepare? AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com is looking for distributors. Email bugoutamerica@usa.com. Go to AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, a veteran-owned and operated company. But do it today.
We all know that they're not telling us the truth. So stand up for your rights, demand the real medicine, and your right to use it and grow it. This is Rick Sensen, and you're listening to American Freedom Radio.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me in American Freedom Radio. Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys, because they have all the technology, they have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
And when we're not invading some sovereign nation or setting it on fire from the air, which is more fun for our Nintendo pilots, then we're usually declaring war on something here at home. Did you ever notice that about us? We love to declare war on things here in America. Anything we don't like about ourselves, we declare war on it. We don't do anything about it. We just declare war on it. It's the only metaphor we have in our public discourse for solving problems, declaring war. We have to declare war on everything. We have a war on crime, the war on poverty, the war on litter, the war on cancer, the war on drugs. But you ever notice we got no war on homelessness? Huh? No war on homelessness. You know why? There's no money in that problem. No money to be made off of the homeless. If you could find a solution to homelessness where the corporate swine and the politicians could steal a couple of $1 million each, you see the streets of America begin to clear up pretty quick. I'll guarantee you that. I will guarantee you that.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow. Friendships to flourish with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control is good. 5, rocket copy. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio. Policy Radio, offering a unique perspective on everything. Geopolitics, culture creation, the reality of the world we live in. Coming to you live from New York City, your host, Pierce Redmond.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Porkins Policy Radio. I am your host, Pierce Redmond. I have pleaded with Keelan Balderson to stick around for about another 10 minutes or so. So if you're just joining us, we've been speaking with Keelan all about the Parsons Green attack, which happened back on September 15th, some of the strange things going on with that. And we just briefly kind of wanted to touch on something that Keelan brought up towards the end of the first hour there. But that's this, everything is a hoax, it's all fake. And this is something that both of us can't stand. And Keelan, you've dealt with this much more so than I have, by covering things like 7/7. You've made a documentary on 7/7, very involved in that community. And there is, of course, this, it never happened, blah, blah, blah. Everyone's a crisis actor. And this meme or, disease has sort of infiltrated much of the truth movement and the conspiracy culture. And it sort of, I think, was at its peak with things like Boston and Sandy Hook, which is why there is no good research done on Boston or Sandy Hook to this day. But to my knowledge, or in my opinion, it sort of died down a bit. And then, now all of a sudden it's sort of popping up again. And, on your video that you made after the attack, where it's entitled Speculation and Agendas. This is not meant to be, you're just sort of commenting on the immediate aftermath. And, there's a whole bunch of morons, who, like we were saying, over the break. I mean, they either accuse you of being Jewish, which is apparently, that's the ultimate sin, or that, it's fake. These are crisis actors. I mean, there was one person, who I couldn't help but comment back to. He just said fake hoax. So I said, so then it's real? And then, he kind of gave me like a stupid, bullshit answer. But I mean, that just sort of like shows you the level of, it's like people that, you say something and they don't like it and they, fake news.
It's just
fake hoax. I mean, what does that mean?
It's just this out, like within literally, you can count it. It's like 10 minutes within 10 minutes of an incident happening, somebody will upload a video to YouTube just arrogantly screaming that it's a hoax. Mm-hmm. They're not there, so obviously they don't have any first-hand evidence. They've not, scanned the scene. They've not done anything. All they've done is maybe seen a photo, or they heard somebody on the news say something, and then they just scream hoax. They don't really care about research or analysis. They don't have any real insight into the security state and the history of MI5 and the history of terrorism. They don't care about the years of research that some people put into investigating things like false flag terrorism. They just like sitting on Facebook, making like silly memes that are really obnoxious, and they think they've cracked the case. I think it's almost like an addiction or something. Yeah. They just seem to get off on it. Like, in this case, the big smoking gun is this young lady who, she's got a nice clean coat on, because it's a nice clean coat and, she doesn't appear to have any injuries. It's a hoax, and she's an actor. And that's just the end of it. I'm like, well, why is that? Maybe she wasn't standing directly in the line of this alleged fireball. Maybe she was bandaged up and she didn't really need to be. This was an emergency situation, a big response. Maybe her ears were ringing and they just thought they would patch them up a bit. Like, maybe it was a bit of a photo op, but all of those things doesn't mean that it was a staged hoax. I would suggest if you were going to stage an attack like this, you would do it exactly the way they said that it happened, because nobody died, right? So, if you were, I just don't get the logic of staging something so out in the open. It just doesn't make sense, because people would spot that it's fake. Like with Boston, all of these so-called smoking guns are just these inconclusive, like I can see a shadow of something, that must be someone pouring blood. Oh, why is this guy laying on the floor? Why did he put his sunglasses on? That must mean it's a hoax. Oh, maybe his eyes hurt. Maybe he's confused. Like, there's all sorts of other explanations, and they just kind of patch everything together and scream hoax. And,
No, it's funny you were just saying, so because this woman's coat isn't, I don't know, singed or covered in blood or something, it means it's fake. But on the flip side of that, it was all of these, armchair medical experts, pointing to, the way that this guy's, leg is blown off and that's clearly fake, so it's like they'll have it both ways. Either it's the gore is fake, or, there's no gore, so it's fake. It's just like you said, it's almost like this addiction. I also find it particularly unsettling the speed that some of these videos come out. It really is like, it's like right after you see it on CNN, there's somebody that on YouTube that's uploaded something immediately screaming at how this is all, this isn't real. That's just, damn, that's really quick response, it takes a little bit of time to edit a video and do things like that. And that's not to say because they knew ahead of time, but it almost like these people are just sort of waiting, in the shadows to immediately just sort of pounce on this. Like they have nothing else to do with their entire lives other than, wait at home to sort of shout hoax, with stuff. And just, very quickly, Keelan, and then I will let you go. But I thought we would just be remiss if we didn't mention this, because it was something that you had pointed out to me. But again, with this, there's we're talking about people posting videos on, comments and stuff on YouTube, and all this internet regulation, police funding and stuff like that. And the commissioner, the Metropolitan Police Commissioner, just sort of came out. I believe it was just asking for more police funding, but she's sort of an interesting character, right? Because she was intimately involved in the killing of John Charles Jimenez, who was an innocent man murdered by the police a few days after 7/7. So I just wanted to just have you comment on that a little.
Yeah, so this lady called Cressida Dick, who is now the chief of the Metropolitan Police, she's the commissioner. She kind of did the media rounds saying a bit of a political statement, really, that the police don't have enough funding, and they want to put more police on the streets and things like that, and then, their resources are stretched. And that it's particularly interesting because, like you say, she was the head of the operation that killed John Charles D. Menendez, this innocent Brazilian guy who, after 7/7, was just catching the tube, and the police shot him a ridiculous, I can't remember the exact number, but a ridiculous number of times in the head, execution style, in the middle of a carriage in front of everybody. And then they literally lied that he jumped the ticket barrier, that he had really bulky gear on, that he was running away from them, and that he looked like this suspected Islamic suicide bomber, or this person they were following. And they made all of that up. And ultimately, the inquest was an open verdict somehow, not an unlawful killing. So yeah, and she was in charge of that. And so when she's calling for, or at least putting more police on the streets in the wake of this, you have to wonder whether she's really the right person to be doing that. I mean, it doesn't make me feel particularly safer to have sort of armed police around and to have a bigger police presence. Because to me, just logically, if you're going to prevent a terror attack, you have to work on specific intelligence. You need to know that something's going down. You need to you need to know who this person is. You can't just like everyone has shopping bags. Everyone,
right.
It doesn't really. I don't really understand the logic behind it. I don't. Maybe in a response to something that happens, but I don't particularly feel safe with these people around, especially in light of what did happen after 7/7.
No, I mean, a perfect example, too, because, I mean, this guy was just running in a train station late to catch a train. And, and what was their excuse? He had wires sticking out or something? It was like headphones or something, something benign. Yeah, and of course, it's, that didn't – nobody was protected. Nobody, they weren't doing any, they killed an innocent man. And you had said to me, like in an email or something, or on Twitter, it's sort of like you were just saying there, either the police are going after real intelligence, and going after specific leads, or, you have a police officer that checks everybody's shopping bag, no matter where they are. We could have, then let's just put a cop in everyone's house, and then there would be no crime. Yeah, and it's rich coming from her too. And talk about failing upwards, because she was just like not a low level cop, but she was just a cop prior to that, and now she's commissioner of the whole Metropolitan Police.
I'm just surprised that the media, well, maybe not surprised, but how they don't really ever go back to the Menendez story. It doesn't really come up. It's not come up in any of the mainstream media, even though Cressida Dick did this media, did the media rounds. And you think it would be. I mean, this is just an innocent family lost their relative, and nothing was done, and no one was. They didn't even rule it unlawful killing, but no one needs to be held accountable. It's an open verdict. So yeah, very bizarre.
Well, just before I let you go, I'll just say, people not bringing things up, especially the 7/7 stuff. But back, this was, I don't know, maybe a year ago or something, there was a bombing on a train in Moscow. And I happened to be watching RT. I just flipped it on. And none other than Peter Power was their expert.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and nothing about the fact that this guy is like, at best is just a shady ex-cop, who was running some bizarre drill the day of 7/7, but nothing on the fact that he's part of one of the official alternative conspiracy theories as to this. So it's like how quick we forget some of these people that play these very important roles in forming particular theories and ideas and stuff like that. But anyway, Keelan, I will let you go. Quickly though, tell everybody where they can go to follow your work, your videos, your articles, all that stuff.
Yeah, everyone can go to wideshut.co.uk. That you'll get a feed of like all the recent stuff. But if you click the categories, you can go to Boston, you can go to 7/7, you can find all the stuff. Click through to the YouTube. I've done a lot of stuff on 7/7, so a documentary, all sorts of smaller videos, podcasts with Tom Secker, all that kind of good stuff. And I'm really getting back into it. So, check it out.
Excellent. Keelan, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm sure we'll be talking again soon.
I look forward to it.
Okay, everybody, so that was, again, Keelan Balderson of wideshut.co.uk. I highly encourage everyone to go check it out. I was just pulling up his YouTube page when we were during the break. And I'll include it in the show notes for today's episode, but there's a Keelan had put out a video. This is a little while ago, I guess, but it was a 7/7 conspiracy road trip debunked. And this is this ridiculous BBC show that both Keelan and Tom were invited to go on, but they respectfully declined. And I believe there's some podcasts too that the two of them did, sort of talking about their reservations with all of this. But I should touch on this horrible shooting that just took place in Las Vegas on Sunday night. And as I said, I am going to be doing a bit more of like an in-depth thing with Ed Opperman sometime later in the week. But I kind of wanted to talk a bit about the Vegas, but also what's going on in Europe right now, because as many people in the alternative media, sometimes we throw, or conspiracy culture, I don't even want to use the alt media term anymore, but in the conspiracy culture, sometimes we kind of glom onto ideas without truly kind of understanding the complexity or the reality of what these ideas or these phrases and things like that mean. And that, of course, brings me to Operation Gladio, because and Operation Gladio is for sure real. There's no denying it. It is, the government admits to this. There was a very famous, I think it was BBC documentary, the long one. It's like 3 or 4 hours, with former Gladio operatives in Italy and other places talking about, yes, in fact, this was a NATO stay-behind mission involving intelligence in multiple European countries, and we were, recruiting right-wing terrorists to carry out false flag bombings to be blamed on leftists and all that kind of stuff. And the idea, again, of course, something that is, I think somewhat well understood, in people that are sort of running these circles, is the idea of the strategy of tension. That that Gladio was designed, I guess initially the idea was of the stay behind mission, so that if and when the evil Soviets, launched their grand attack and invaded Western democratic Europe, that there would be these, secret cells all over these European countries that would be able to fight back against the communists. And obviously that was not really the reality of what Operation Gladio, I think, ever was, but certainly not what it became. It became this very corrupt, right-wing, crypto-fascist it's shit show, basically. But the idea of the strategy of tension, that to create tension within the respective countries, and many people kind of point to Italy and Turkey as well, because that was really where the Gladio operations are fairly well documented as well. I mean, this is, I believe even the Italian Parliament in the 90s, they had a huge parliamentary investigation where they named names and they pointed out that, yes, this was going on. But to create the strategy of tension, again, that whether it's real or not, but the bombings, these series of bombings all over Italy and other places, throughout the 60s and 70s, all over Europe, really, and that did create a lot of tension between the political left and the political right, and of course within just the sort of average citizens, those that identified either left or right, those that identified with the reaction of the state to these sorts of things. It creates tension, it creates division, and of course it's much easier to dominate over a population when they're divided as opposed to united, or if not united, it's a lot easier to dominate or rule over people when they're fighting with one another, especially when they're fighting in sort of heated, over the top sort of a way, which is obviously what, Gladio achieved that. The leftists in Europe never really did, rise to power. These Nazi sympathizers and right-wing fascists and stuff, I mean, they were able to maintain, for the most part, their grip on power, whether it be through, the sort of official channels of government, or through the more sort of shadowy, deep state, type, groups and things, which is, very much when you look at, the Italian Gladio, where you have the Mason, the Freemasons involved in this, and Nazi sympathizers, and CIA, and Italian intelligence, and all those sorts of. And again, too, I mean, you can look at Germany and lots of countries, Turkey as well. But there, and I'm guilty of kind of pushing some of this with this whole idea, and I don't use the term anymore because I don't really believe it so much, but there's the, Gladio B. That's this idea put forth by, people you know who I'm talking about, but myself and others have also sort of promoted the idea of Gladio B, that this sort of shifted, from funding and using right-wing terrorists to using Islamic terrorists. And I think there's some truth to that as the sort of global battle for supremacy shifted somewhat away from the, communists, the Soviets, into whatever the next sort of phase, which I guess would just be Russian power, when we sort of lose the idea of the Soviet Union and it just becomes the Russians, that it did sort of shift a bit and that we were using Islamic terrorism. Now, I think that in and of itself is a little bit kind of off because we've always used nefarious groups as proxy forces, and I think that's a bit more what was, with the sort of rise of Islamic terrorism. I think that's more what it was. This was just more convenient. The places that we were interested in getting involved in, like Afghanistan, like name a country in the Middle East, or even in other places, Somalia, other places in the Horn of Africa and whatnot. It just so happened, that these were Muslim majority nations or nations where we could use radical factions of the Islamic movement in order to fulfill our own geopolitical aims. But that is a bit different than the idea of what Gladio was in Europe and Turkey. That was not, the operations that were going on there, while they may have eventually kind of led to, instances of blowback at times, and we see that in Italy, where, the intelligence services in Italy and the Gladio, sort of lost control over some of these right-wingers that they were using, and that did result in, right-wingers sort of carrying out their own bombing campaigns separate from what they were being told to do by their Gladio handlers. But ultimately, I think the use of Islamic terrorism is not necessarily like the second stage of Gladio, or at least in the way that we've been, told by certain people in the alternative media, such as it is. That's the idea. So, I don't think that recruiting Uyghurs, in Xinjiang and shipping them into Syria is really, I don't think that's like Gladio B. Now, I know I've said that it is, I've said that in numerous shows. I've mentioned the idea of Gladio B. I don't think that is really, because it's not really about, I don't think the goal is to create a strategy of tension in Syria. I think the idea is to funnel jihadis, or people that are sympathetic to the jihadi movement, say in Western China, and funneling them into Syria to fight along with al-Nusra or ISIS or whatever. But they're not really, the goal of that is not to create a strategy of tension in Syria. The goal of that is to overthrow Assad, or to at least create enough instability that we can control swaths of Syria. That is different than the notion of creating tension or dissent in, say, a domestic, in a domestic way. So say like in England, this wave of 5 terror attacks in 6 months, that is very different. And that probably represents more, if there is an idea of Gladio B. And I think we can kind of just drop that as a term, and we can just say Gladio, because these operations are still sort of the same. But this wave of attacks in the UK, ongoing stuff in France. As I said, at the beginning of the show, there was two women were stabbed to death in Marseille on Sunday, and then the guy was shot by the police, and he's alleged to have been shouting Allah Akbar. Then the trial of Abdelkader Merah has begun in Paris. He's the brother of Mohamed Merah, who went on a killing spree, as I said, back in 2012 in Toulouse. He killed 7 people, including 2 soldiers, children, and a rabbi, I believe. That is Gladio type stuff, because that is creating a strategy of tension. That is creating tension and dissent within those 2 countries. Because, what do we have coming out of this, of course, is the rise of a more far right political movement that views anybody that is Muslim or dark skinned, or anything that's not white and, indigenous, Frenchman or Englishman or whatever, what have you, Swedish, it doesn't matter. Views anyone as different as sort of part of the problem. And then of course, if you were just an upstanding Muslim citizen in any, European country, you have this hatred of the police, you have this hatred of the right, you have this hatred of, the government policies and things like that. That creates a, huge tension. And even amongst the left and the right, because of course you have this sort of tension where the more sort of left-wing politicians, and you can look at England, with especially with the Manchester bombing taking place around the British elections. Jeremy Corbyn, who's he's viewed or perceived as being some sort of a socialist, leftist, terrorist sympathizer. And then on the other hand, Theresa May, the, defender of Western British values, who's going to stomp out the evil terrorists. That creates quite a bit of tension. And certainly the Manchester bombing, and these other things only kind of add to that. Because then again, what do you have? You have a political left in the UK, let's say, is represented by Jeremy Corbyn, that wants to have a softer policy towards, say, the immigration of Muslims into the UK, a softer policy in terms of the foreign affairs in Middle Eastern countries, versus the more right wing, say either within the Tory party and Theresa May, or even more so, UKIP and then, the English Defence League and stuff like that want a harder stance. They want, no immigration. They want to kick out all the Muslims. We got to bomb these countries. We got to teach them, who's the top dog in the world. And that really creates a huge amount of tension within these countries. And you're able to achieve that and this isn't to make light of the number of people that have died in these 5 terrorist attacks, but it's a fairly small number. Even, again, to take the Parsons Green attack, nobody died. Yet the strategy of tension certainly continues with that. This is given the right in Britain. This is all the evidence they need. Here we go. Another one of these refugees that just came in here. He's a secret ISIS agent or self-radicalized. They can't be trusted. The same, it's already happening. And I think, I don't know quite the sort of rhyme or reason for this, but, because I think there is a shift in foreign policy a bit away from, confronting radical jihadis, whatever they may be. And again, you can listen to, people like, Tom Jocelyn or Bill Raggio, who write for, the Long War Journal. If you listen to them, of course, the threat of Islamic terrorism is everywhere. There's jihadis under your bed. You can't trust anyone. The Taliban is, they're always going on about, the Taliban is becoming stronger and stronger, which is like true and not true in so many ways. But I think overall, people are less and less afraid of that. Does anyone really talk about Al-Qaeda? No. Does anyone really care that Zawahiri is still out there? No. ISIS? I mean, does anyone actually seriously? And I'm not talking to you out there, the faithful listeners who I assume are on board with me, but even average people, go, ask your parents, ask the man on the street, ask your friends that aren't into this. I mean, are they really, truly afraid of ISIS? No, because everybody knows they're kind of a joke. Obviously the U.S. government has sort of tried to revive Baghdadi is after the Russians killed him. Recently there was an audio recording. It's always an audio recording. They never want to do video. As if fuzzy audio recording allegedly of Baghdadi is supposed to mean, oh, he's alive. So they're trying to revive him, give him another 9 lives in his terrorist persona. But that's not really there. There's this global threat of jihadis. That doesn't really exist. Again, we're kind of back to basics. The Russians, the North Koreans, and the Iranians. Those are our real threats. But, you can't – I think that only goes so far. There's only so much you can kind of push when it comes to these big geopolitical things. But to create tension at home, to create division at home – we do still see the use of Gladio-style operations, which is definitely, that's what Salman Abedi was. This is a guy, whose family worked for MI6 or had some sort of connection to MI6. This kid is allowed to sort of do everything that you would assume would be, put you on a watch list. Like Keelan and I have said, I mean, he's meeting with terrorists in prison. He's traveling to Libya and other places. He's being monitored, but nobody's really connecting the dots. I mean, these are the Gladio type things. And that is where the strategy of tension is. So that sort of brings me, because there does seem to be, again, this wave of these sorts of bombings and attacks and stuff. And even if there are only a few people, it does, it's quite scary. I mean, if I lived in, for instance, I mean, my parents were just in France over the summer, so just a few months ago. And they said there was this, you get this feeling, and, they hated admitting it, but, you'd be in like a big crowded market somewhere. I don't believe they were in Marseille, but I think when they were in Nice. And you have this moment of like, dear God, is a truck about to kind of drive through, and suddenly you're looking over your shoulder. Then you start to see cops everywhere. They said they would do things when it would become so crowded in say like a marketplace or something like that. The police would come and not like break it up and move people along, but they would sort of make themselves be known, and they would sort of try to shift people, moving out, don't all congregate in one area. And that is undoubtedly because of this wave of violence that's gone on all throughout France. And I mean, you look at, the Charlie Hebdo, the attacks in Marseille, the killing spree in Toulouse. There's a whole bunch of them that have been going on in France. Then, same thing, UK, you look at, all of the Westminster attack, the London Bridge attack, Manchester, Parsons Green. It creates tension and whatnot. It creates a sense of unease, and ultimately the state is able to kind of capitalize on this. And it also makes it easier to shift blame or to confront, the sort of ultimate enemy in all of this. So again, while I don't believe the ultimate enemy is like radical jihadis, we can always shift this to, well, the Iranians are the biggest. All I have to do is say, well, the Iranians are the biggest supporters of terrorism. And that somehow means, without actually having to connect any dots, well, Iran supports terrorists. A Muslim, guy blows up a train in wherever. Therefore, Iran must have some sort of, well, if we get rid of Iran, that will stop terrorism. So again, the same way that if the government in Italy in the 70s has a bunch of false flag bombings, that are blamed on leftists that are really being carried out by right-wingers. It's the leftist fault, and the leftists are, of course, supported by the Soviet Union. Therefore, we must get rid of the Soviet Union. And I think that's more the sort of like the line that we should be following here. But that kind of brings me to what's going on here in the U.S. because there is a strategy of tension going on in the U.S. and I think it has oddly, or maybe not oddly, it's less to do with jihadis and Muslim terrorists, and we've seen our fair share of that. Obviously, the biggest being 9/11, but there have been other things. In New York, there's been a series like I mentioned before. I mean, the Chelsea bombings that took place in 2016. While there was nothing like concrete, obviously, the guy was Middle Eastern, so it doesn't, you can tell how they're going to frame that particular thing. But I think the strategy of tension that's going on here, the Gladio style operations that are going on here in the U.S., are much more now. It's sort of like the old school. Again, the old school kind of Gladio stuff where it's regular people. It's the left and the right, whatever those really mean. But that's the general idea. It's the people that love Trump and the people that hate Trump. And I think like I said, I'm going to kind of go into more detail about this later on because I don't want to speculate too much about the Vegas shooting. I haven't followed it closely enough to really make heads or tails out of what I think happened or anything kind of concrete. And I don't want to jump to conclusions. We really don't know that much. What do we really know? Stephen Paddock killed at least 60 people. We know that he was fairly wealthy and well off. He owned like 2 small airplanes. He was he had a pilot's license. He had money. He lived in a retirement community. We know that his father was a pretty famous bank robber and was on the FBI's most wanted list. That doesn't mean that he's a terrorist or something, or that he's necessarily predisposed to, snap like this. But there's not a lot that we really know about him. Now, it's interesting that, here's what I think is really going on here, though, is that no matter what, the whole Vegas shooting, this will be exploited. This will to foment more attention. Now, this is, and again, I don't think this is a fake thing or a hoax or some sort of a false flag to steal our guns. If they wanted to steal our guns, they haven't done a very good job at it. If every time there's a mass shooting in the U.S., that's some sort of a globalist, Jewish leftist plot by Obama and Hillary Clinton to steal our guns, I mean, they really need to, get better at doing this because it doesn't work. If anything, gun sales go through the roof. Nothing really changes with regards to gun control. And it just full disclosure, I'm not I don't think we should ban guns. I don't I think there is something to be said for the Second Amendment. I think it exists for a reason. Not the reason that many right wingers will give, I need my gun because, it's in the Constitution. No, I mean, the Second Amendment is there, in order to protect ourselves from the state. But that's, another story. But, and I'm not in favor of this, because it said too, when they say gun control, what they really mean, they want to ban all guns. I don't really, I don't really think that we should allow just the police and the military, and I suppose some, mercenaries and private contractors to be the only people that are allowed to carry guns. I don't really know how that makes us safe. And of course, prohibiting something, doesn't stop the sale of it. Look no further than drugs. If prohibiting heroin really, if it worked, there'd be no heroin here, but it's the opposite effect. But anyway, I don't at the same time, I don't think that this is some sort of a, like I saw instantly, of course, you get this, InfoWars starts pumping out the most ridiculous story that, and I think it's like in the video, it's like Alex Jones on his cell phone, okay, supposedly, he doesn't show us anything. He's reading like a text or a message or something from his quote FBI source, saying that the FBI were there in Vegas. Now, maybe they were. I don't know. I haven't, like I said, I haven't read enough and I haven't looked deeply into it. But it would be pretty amazing to me that the FBI was there unless, why would they be mobilized that fast? The Las Vegas Police Department is huge. They have their own SWAT teams. They have their own elite units. I don't think it's all that normal that the FBI, like when there's a mass shooting in Virginia Tech, the FBI didn't swarm in there. And as far as I can tell, that would be like the fastest mobilization of FBI units like ever, right? I don't know how long the shooting went on for, but I don't think it was long enough that you would get the FBI all together and they're, storming into the Mandalay Bay Hotel. But Alex Jones, his FBI source tells him that, they were there, that they were the ones that killed him, but they're covering it up, and that all over this Stephen Paddock's hotel room there was ISIS and Antifa literature, and there's pictures of him in the Middle East. And this is all on behalf of the globalists who want to start the civil war, to oppress the whites and blah, 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 and he goes off on this whole thing. And take our guns and all that kind of nonsense. Now, we really don't know much of anything. Interestingly, Al-Amaq, which is ISIS's, I guess they're not their news outlet per se, but they're like the organization that that puts their media arm for ISIS. And Amaq has repeatedly stated, 3 or 4 times now, that Paddock was one of their soldiers, that he was, working for them, that he had converted to Islam, that he had an Islamic name, that this was their operation. And, again, ISIS will claim to be behind anything. And in spite of what some of these talking heads will say that, they're never wrong. They claim to be behind everything. That doesn't mean that it's true. Any terrorist organization out there can claim to be behind anything. And, they do that all the time. That's not a new thing. It's interesting that ISIS is really kind of sticking to this story. And it would be kind of shocking if, in fact, Stephen Paddock had converted to Islam and, was fighting on behalf of ISIS. That would also be pretty crazy because, there's usually when ISIS, their operative is behind something, there's a paper trail. There's, rants on Facebook and social media. There's evidence that they searched out videos and stuff on how to make a bomb, and there's a whole shopping list of things that they all usually tick. Okay, and furthermore, this is like an old white guy, so that's pretty unbelievable that they were able to convince him to shoot a bunch of people at a country music festival. Now, I don't quite know where that's going, but that doesn't really matter because now that idea is out there that Stephen Paddock is an ISIS soldier and that he's, working for ISIS. So again, the strategy of tension is there, whether it's real or not. Now that's a thing, and let's leave that aside because I think that's kind of bullshit at the moment. We'll have to see, obviously. But beyond that, what is happening with this? This horrible event is being used on both sides to, again, create a strategy of tension and to foment discontent between these groups. So what do we have? We had people saying horrible things. There's people, liberals say, well, I don't really feel sorry, because they were all Republicans anyway at a country music festival, so they sort of had it coming. There was like a CBS legal executive that got fired for basically saying that on Facebook, I think. And that's the sentiment, it's like Hillary Clinton going on about silencers. There were no silencers. What would that even matter? I don't quite understand that, how that's even a thing. But again, this is always framed as, well, the Republicans brought this upon themselves. Now, again, of course, on the Republican or the right side of this, they're just sort of itching. He's an Antifa guy. He was a Bernie Sanders supporter. He loved Hillary Clinton. They're waiting to jump onto that thing, and they'll use that, of course. But what I'm trying to say here is that these Gladio style things, they're still happening, and I think that's the Stephen Paddock, the shooting in Vegas by Stephen Paddock. That doesn't matter what I am still of the mindset at the moment that this really was just, I don't know, a guy that lost it or something. But it almost, again, it doesn't really matter whether this was he was a deep cover MK Ultra CIA agent or some guy that snapped, or his girlfriend or his wife, the woman he's living with, who's I think in the Philippines of all places. And I believe she's supposed to be Indonesian, so Muslim. And what, maybe, I don't know, she convinced him to do this in his flight. None of that really matters at the end of the day, because what the Vegas attack is achieving is to sow discontent and disharmony in an America that's already kind of ripping their hair out over all of this. Again, we don't need terrorist this is sort of my one of my problems with the Gladio B type scenario for this sort of stuff is that for the most part, I think in America, there is this sense of we're all sort of opposed to no one is like pro jihadi. Okay. And I guess that's true in Europe as well. No one's really, pro jihadi. That's just the means with which to create the real sort of strategy of tension, or the real sort of problem, which is always this sort of left-right divide, or this pro-Trump, anti-Trump. So it doesn't matter. Again, Stephen Paddock could be a Trump supporter who wanted to kill Trump supporters. It doesn't matter, because both sides will sort of use this event, and they will co-opt it, and they will manipulate people's ideas and people's emotions and whatnot to fulfill their ultimate ends with all of this. And I find that, again, you look at the stuff in Charlottesville, not that dickhead who drove his car and killed Heather Heyer, not that he was some sort of a Gladio agent, he seems like he was just a fucking loser, right-winger idiot who decided to do this. But, it's not that that's a Gladio operation through and through, but the end result of it is very Gladio-esque, because all it does is it continues this tension, that there is a fight, amongst the liberals and the right-wingers, that there's a fight against the people that are proud white nationalists that aren't racist, they're just proud white nationalists, against the evil, gay, Marxist, trans, Islamic, deep state Jews that want to, that are trying to circumvent everything. That's where the fight is. That's, I keep saying it. I'm sorry. I keep just repeating myself, but that's the strategy of tension. That's where the sort of, the thrust of this is. And, I see that more and more already, with this sort of rush to judgment over who Stephen Paddock is, what his aims were, what were the motivations of all of this. There is no, unity over any of this. And I'm sorry, it is like, it is pretty despicable. There are people out there that do kind of, Republicans, it's like as if because you maybe voted Republican and you attended a country music festival, that, you voted for these laws that allow – first off, Paddock is meant to have been firing with a fully automatic rifle. Those are not legal, okay? There's nothing – there's no Republicans are pushing bills to make fully automatic high-powered rifles something you can buy in Walmart. So already, it's not like gun control wasn't going to stop that, okay? He had to illegally – either purchase a fully automatic rifle or somehow illegally alter a rifle to make it fully automatic. But again, what I am seeing though is this sort of continue, and it's not just here. You look at the UK, you look at France, you look at other places all over Europe. It's predominantly Europe and Western Europe in particular, and the US. But this wave of violence. That many times also it seems almost devoid of any political ideology. What was Salman Abedi's political ideology? Nothing that we know of, really. Because according to his parents and everybody that knew him, he wasn't religious. What was the political ideology of Ahmed Hassan? We have no idea, because again, there's nothing, there's nothing overt about anything. It's not like he was shouting Allah Akbar, when he was, left a bucket on the train or something like that. And those things seem to seem to matter, less, more and more. They're not important. That's not the thrust of these sorts of arguments. Instead, it kind of boils back down to, you're either with us or you're against us. You're either a good, strong white nationalist Christian conservative that wants to preserve the ideals of our slave-owning founding fathers, or you're part of this, gay, liberal, whatever Jewish agenda that wants to, circumvent the law and, make all the frogs feminine or something. You know what I mean? Like that's the sort of the argument that's being had here. And all of these events, be they Charlotte, be they what just happened in Las Vegas, what undoubtedly will unfortunately, knock on wood, will probably happen again. Somewhere in the U.S., be another shooting or something like that. That's where this political battle is really taking place, and all of these events, whether they are false flags or not, and I really don't suspect there's much to most of that. It doesn't matter because, and this is the thing, the state no longer needs to use a false flag. Okay. They don't need to really set people up. I think all they really need to do at the moment right now is either wait for something to happen, which very well might be what happened in Las Vegas on Sunday night, and then you wait for something to happen, and then you exploit that. And you use that, and you foment whatever sort of tension or discontent that you want. Okay? Or you kind of allow for a certain, type of individual to sort of, exist and navigate this world. And, you might sort of put some things in place and kind of poke and prod him along until they find themselves in a situation where they're committing some sort of an act of violence, which will, of course, be used against all of us. But anyway, I'm going to leave it there for this week. Lots of interesting shows coming up. And, of course, check out for my little special episode on the Las Vegas shooting. But anyway, I'll stop rambling. Thank you all so much for listening to me, and I will be talking to you very soon.
No rules. No rules. No taboo topics. No taboo topics. No fear of doom. No fear of doom. We are American Freedom Radio. American Freedom Radio.
Since the beginning, civilizations have risen and fallen. Rome, ancient Persia, Mongolia, Britain, and now America. Befallen by natural disasters, broken families, moral decay, lack of preparedness and conflict. Don't let this happen to you. Are you prepared? Would you like to help others prepare? AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com is looking for distributors. Email bugoutamerica@usa.com. Go to AmericanSurvivalWholesale.com, a veteran-owned and operated company. But do it today.
And I hope people support American Freedom Radio. And I hope people vote with their dollars and really understand the value of having American Freedom Radio. Because that's my family. If you love me at all, Jack Blood, support American Freedom Radio. Like, my family has literally disowned me. American Freedom Radio, Danny and Don and those guys, those are my actual family. So please support these guys, because they have all the technology, they have all these great things that they're going to do, but obviously they can't do it all by themselves. So not only would I like to see you support them, I'd like to see you retweet them and repost them and really get involved and get on the bandwagon, so to speak, on doing that do-it-yourself promotion, because they're a do-it-yourself radio network, and we just need that so much.
You're listening to AmericanFreedomRadio.com, the network who perseveres in delivering intelligent debate, constructive dialogue with true independence. The freedom to broadcast the truth is not free at all. So what is American Freedom Radio worth to you? The empowering information with fun, honest and pure integrity behind it provides an example to follow, friendships to flourish, with the moral altruism that pulls no punches. The hosts sacrifice and show remarkable discipline in their duty to deliver quality radio in service to the community with strength, wisdom and loyalty. The founders of AFR wish to thank you personally for sharing your views and insights to make the best radio and alternative media. Now it's time for you to give something back and play a vital role in the future of America. Be as generous with us as we've been with you. Click on the donate banner at AmericanFreedomRadio.com or volunteer by emailing AmericanFreedomRadio@ymail.com. Vaccine, psychotropic drugs and artillery batteries not included.
Launch sequence initiated.
We're now in the approach phase. Everything looking good. Control out. Control is good. 5, roger, copy. 3, 2, 1. Okay.
Prepare your mind to experience American Freedom Radio.